Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamenenchev with Tom Castleman. We have a fun show for you guys today. We'll recap two crazy college football semifinal games. Maybe the best college football day of all time. I mean, certainly the best of the CFP, but could be the best all time. It was that good. It was that dramatic. We'll talk plenty about it. Obviously, we'll make our championship prediction, TCU or Georgia. A lot of NFL on the docket as well. We got some playoff scenarios on the line, a win and you're in game between the Titans and Jaguars, Packers and Lions, basically playing in kind of a win and in game, but the Lions do need some help. Green Bay is in with a win. So that's just two of the games we'll be talking about. Other scenarios gets a little more complicated. We'll go over those. So exciting week 18 coming up in the NFL. We'll have our betting locks of the week, which went well for you, not as well for other people on the show. Sports trivia, statements of the week. Very, very exciting stuff. But first, we will start with, honestly, the saddest story in the NFL this week. There is some silver lining. We'll get into that, hoping for the best. But this is probably the toughest story we've had to cover on this show, certainly among the toughest stories we've had to cover. Buffalo's Damar Hamlin had a cardiac arrest on the field against the Bengals. He had to get what at the time was life-saving CPR done on him. The game was suspended. It won't be played this week. I think that's a good decision by the NFL. We'll get into that later on as well. I do want to make this clear that we are recording right now 12:44 on Wednesday, January 4th. So this show, I'm going to try to get it up as soon as possible, but this might not be up until, 5, 6, maybe later on tonight. So if there's any sort of updates on the Damar Hamlin front, we are not doing a live show. So obviously that will not be included in the show. But he's currently in critical condition at the hospital. News are that he is getting better, which is good. But to be honest with you, Tom, I'm not exactly sure how to frame this question. I guess I'll start with just what are your thoughts on it and kind of like first reactions as you saw it happening, because I'll get into it personally here in a second, but it was just, I was working while it happened, but having an eye on the game. So it was kind of a surreal thing in a negative way, but generally just your first thoughts and impressions about this whole situation. I want to focus on the player, the injury first. Then I think we will get into what does it mean for, playoff picture? What does it mean for when this game will be played? How has the NFL handled this? But I think that stuff is secondary. I do want to first go over just our general thoughts on what was truly a horrific scene and thoughts and prayers going out for the Bills, Damar Hamlin, the Bengals also. One thing we haven't talked about, it's not his fault at all, but T. Higgins kind of sort of delivering that blow. That's got to be very tough for him as well.
Yeah, it's something that is more or less unprecedented in its extent. I mean, I know we had, a little bit of a retrospect back to 1971. You have Chuck Hughes, but that's not really apples to apples, because what was kind of found out with Hughes is that he wasn't really that healthy of an individual. This is before a time where the NFL had mandatory heart and cardio screenings. This falls under the category of a freak event because I didn't see it happen live. I got to the game late. Actually, it was postponed by the time I tuned into the game. In front of him here, what I'm hearing, honestly, I'm glad that I didn't actually witness it happen. I have not sought out any replays of it simply because the oral history of it, hearing about what happened, is absolutely terrifying, where he gets up, he feels fine, and then just collapses on the field. And, incredible shout out to the first responders who were out on that field immediately. This is something that it's obviously an incredibly rare occurrence. It's a one-off event, a type of thing, and it is the most jarring thing that we've witnessed in our sports lives as far as the severity and the consequence of this game that we enjoy watching so much. It's something that I personally have to compartmentalize. Sitting down and watching and seeing these guys who, put on pads, these athletes are bigger, faster, stronger than they've ever been before, and they are running into each other at full speed. This isn't like basketball, which is a contact but not collision sport, or baseball. This is something where the whole point of the game is to hit somebody else as hard as you can. It's something that we don't see unless we're getting into strictly fighting sports, boxing, or MMA. So this is just, this is going to be, I think, the next step. Kind of sort of desensitizing ourselves with this sort of thing, because we see how many times people, have knee injuries, concussion injuries. These are things that we've kind of normalized. This is a whole new brand, and obviously incredibly scary, because in having seen other injuries before, we can compartmentalize and say, okay, well, we know he's going to be okay. Eventually, long term, there are greater effects with concussions, obviously. This is the first time where, in an immediate sense, we don't know how healthy a person's going to be due to the severity of the injury on field and just the growing reporting around it. And great job by Lisa Salters, Joe Buck, the ESPN crew, switching on a dime from sports game mode to breaking news mode, which is something that that's not something that they do. So I also want to give props to them as well for passing along the information as they were getting it, trying to keep the speculation to a minimum. And of course, as you said, most recent reports from Damar's family, is that he's in stable but critical condition. And I don't know if the last percentage I saw is that he was going from receiving 100% oxygen to 50% oxygen, which means he's producing about half of that. So great job by the emergency units, both on the field and then at the hospital. But yeah, like, wide-ranging thoughts on just like the sport as a whole, as well as just in the micro sense, how everything was handled night of. I think that there were a lot of people who were making the best out of a really, really terrifying situation.
Yeah, if he had been given CPR right away, he would have been dead. I mean, I think it's like I don't remember the stats, so I don't want to butcher it, but I've watched obviously a lot on this, and it was one of those where if they hadn't done what they did immediately, he wouldn't be here today. So very, very good job by all the on-field medical staff. For me, it was one of those like shocking things, because I think I didn't really fully process it in the moment. Tom, you know this because you and I talk. Obviously, you're my friend, but in case we have some new listeners today or whatever day they watch this, I do a sports podcast show selling sports memorabilia, and we sell primarily football helmets, actually. So we have a huge NFL crowd, so everyone is always watching the NFL. So I typically will be doing these live breaks, basically, as people gamble for helmets, and I'll have the game on in the background on the computer. We'll be interacting with the customers about the game. So I don't have the volume ever on because, I'm hosting a show. They don't need to hear that volume. But for me, like, the first thing that happened is I looked over and I saw Josh Allen, like, holding, like, his hands over his face and crying. Then I see Stefon Diggs bawling, and I'm like, what is going on? Because someone had commented horrific injury in the game, so I have to flip over to the game, see what's going on. And one thing that I was just waiting for, because we've seen some of these really bad injuries on field before, where a guy gets carted off and you wait for the thumbs up. You see the thumbs up, that's when you know the guy's okay. I mean, obviously there could be some severity, but you know that he's gonna be okay as far as his life. So I was just waiting for the thumbs up. I was like, where's the thumbs up? Let's see the thumbs up. Where's the thumbs up? Never got the thumbs up. That was what was really jarring. And that was very, very tough to see. And obviously I wasn't able to fully listen into what people were saying. I didn't really know exactly what's going on because I was in work mode as well and working while it was happening. But afterwards, I got home that night. I watched all the scenes. Like, I did see the hit. It's crazy. And it kind of reminds me of this is where I'm hoping for the best. Christian Eriksen, the Denmark player, collapsed at the Euros a couple years ago, and he's back and playing. He's healthy right now, doing well. So that's what I'm hoping for Damar Hamlin. But just a very, very tough situation. But I'm hoping for the best here. And I'll get into this much more at the end of the show. I do want to say that this won't be everything, but there has been some silver lining. The support that him and his family, the Bills organization, has received from everyone literally in the country. Obviously, the donations to the toy drive he had on GoFundMe, over $5 million. That has been very, very cool to see. So I think all reports are that he's doing better. This obviously is a fluid situation. It could obviously turn. I'll try to look again on my phone at some point during the show to see if there's any sort of updates we can provide. Again, we are recording. This is not a live show, so the latest update that we have right now, still in critical condition, but doing better at the hospital. So certainly hoping for all of the best. And I mean, again, I don't want to get too much into it. I know you didn't see the play, but it wasn't a gruesome type of hit. But even if like a little like of a chest hit, you get hit in the wrong place, that could literally hurt you. And he's a young man. Like, this is a very young football player, and this is something that you don't want a young man to have to go through. And it's really, really sad. So, I mean, I think we're kind of in unison. Obviously, we don't need to spend too much time on it. I know it's the big story, but I do want to go over some of these other things, which are, to be completely honest, way, way less important. But I do think it is important to note in terms of what does this mean for the NFL. Certainly way less important than the player's life. I'll say one thing. I think the NFL, this is not the time to criticize the NFL. I think the NFL as a whole, when it comes to player safety, for years have botched this. I mean, the Tua case with the concussions is the worst example, but I think a lot of folks are ready to criticize the NFL for not suspending the game right away. But we've seen the whole thumbs up situation, which I said, I was like, you're waiting for the thumbs up. You get the thumbs up. What happens? The guys keep playing afterwards. So I think everyone was trying to process in the moment. So the game did eventually get suspended. The game did eventually get canceled for this week. So I think on that front, the NFL got it right. In terms of what's going to happen going forward, it could be a mess. I know I'll let you get in a little bit on this. I'll talk about it here in a little bit. But what is it going to mean for the playoffs? I mean, what's going to happen on that front? Do they push back, a week? What do they do? Because, I mean, I think somewhere the NFL is hoping for the results to happen where this game doesn't end up mattering. They can forfeit it. But realistically, that's not going to happen. A lot of things have to go. Like, the Chiefs have to lose. Like, the Bengals have to lose the next game. The Bills win the next game. And then it's like the Bills have the 1 seed shirt up. So it's a whole mess. I don't know what's going to happen. But I do want to say real quickly before I let you jump in here, I think, and I'll get into this more, I think personally they should push everything back a week. And what I think right now as a country in the situation, I think that, I know some people booked their Super Bowl tickets, for example. I think any flights, any hotels you scheduled, you should be 100% refunded in light of this situation, because I think that, the hotel and the airline industry has to be aware of this unprecedented situation, because, I mean, the Bills and Bengals, you can't play this game midweek and have them play again. It just puts them at such a disadvantage. I know the player's life, again, is by far the most important, but it's such a messy situation that I think the only way we can do this is if we do push back everything essentially a week, right? I mean, what could we do?
I mean, there's a couple of different things, and obviously being on Wednesday, the NFL weekend is quick upon us. I think that there are a couple of different options. One is you just play Week 18 as is.
And I think real quick, I think the plan, if I'm reading this correctly, I read it, and I don't know if it's been officially made, but I think the way it's looking, the Bills and the Bengals are going to play their Week 18 games. Is that correct? That's what I'm reading online right now. It's not 100% confirmed, but I know the Bills and Patriots. I think the Bills had a walkthrough this morning, not a traditional practice. I know they canceled media availability for the Patriots too, or the Bills, one of them. But I think the way it's trending right now is that the Patriots and Bengals are going to play their Week 18 games, but then they'll still have this game, to play at some point. And one of those teams would have to play a wild card game. So you can't just, what I'm saying, skip it per se.
Yeah, I think like looking at everything here right now, the Baltimore-Cincinnati game in Cincinnati is to be determined. But as of right now, noon Central Time kickoff for New England at Buffalo. So that is the current status for all of the NFL games. I think that there's a couple of things. Logistically, it seems to make the most sense to play this week as is. And then what you do is just have a makeup date where it is Bills at Bengals for, instead of that first wild card weekend, have that be the game. Just push back the playoffs 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just eliminate that bye week between the conference championship and the Super Bowl. That keeps all of the biggest main events in play, essentially, because outside of the teams that already know that they're hosting playoff games, nobody's really booking tickets or booking flights. All the people that would book tickets currently, more or less, already have that figured out, and that's really secondary. I think as far as the schedule goes, that's the most sensible solution, quite frankly, is everybody, get to where you are. I mean, Bengals are already at home, and the Bills traveled back earlier this week, or right after that, the suspended Cincinnati game. So everybody is in where they ought to be for this week. I think it makes most sense to just, pick up the game to its conclusion next weekend, move back the playoffs by, the wild card round by a week. Everybody gets a bye week in that case, leading into the playoffs. I guess the only thing is the 1 seed gets like 2 weeks off in a row,
which is
type
a
of thing.
disadvantage potentially.
That's the sort of thing that the league could look into. I mean,
situation.
It could also be, I don't know if it necessarily makes sense to like split up this week 18, where it's okay, take all the games that quote don't matter, like Texans and Colts. That game doesn't really matter. Saints and Panthers, that game doesn't really matter. Play those games that quote don't matter this week, along with a Bills and Bengals rematch, and then have everybody else on a bye week now, and reschedule that to next weekend. That seems like a lot of shuffling around, though. I think most likely it's just going to be, if you have the 1 seed, congrats, you get 2 weeks off in a row. Good luck dealing with rust or something along those lines. Because quite frankly, I just can't see them doing something where they add playoff teams and nobody gets a bye week, or they play the NFC wild card with the Bills and Bengals, and then in the AFC shift that around.
Throw things up way too much.
I think that's most likely what the NFL is going to do. But obviously, it's an unprecedented situation. The only thing that kind of compares is back in 2001, where they shifted around the entire league schedule after, of course, 9/11. But I mean, that happened week 2. They had plenty of time to sort that out on the back end. We've never had something where it's this crunched up next to the playoffs. So I guess that's the most optimal solution that makes sense, but there's no real easy way around any of it.
Yeah, real quick, 2 quick things. So I just wanted to look at my phone. If you ever see me looking down at my phone, it's easier than clicking here. 2 quick things, quick updates. Bleacher Report as of 13 minutes ago, Bills say Damar Hamlin remains in the ICU in critical condition, but has shown signs of improvement. He's expected to stay under intensive care for the time being. So that's the Damar Hamlin update. Then we have Adam Schefter 2 minutes ago tweeting, NFL exec Jeff Miller said discussions about what to do with the Bills-Bengals game are ongoing. He knows they have to make a decision on it in the coming days, but NFL exec Troy Vincent explains that the league's focus has been on Damar Hamlin. I mean, I think this is what the NFL is hoping for, as is everyone. We're hoping for, again, this is a hope. We don't know what's going to happen. We're hoping for in the next 2 to 3 days, we get word that he's going to be okay for now. Obviously, there could be some long-term issues he has to put up with for the rest of his life. I don't know. I mean, again, Christian Eriksen had a similar situation at the Euros a couple years ago. Christian Eriksen played at the World Cup. He plays for Manchester United, playing at a high level. So, I mean, best case dream scenario, this was just a fluke incident. The guy's fine. I don't know if he's going to want to play football again. He shouldn't have to, but if he does, maybe he wants to play. I don't know. That's the best case scenario. But I think the NFL is hoping for hopefully good news in the next few days, and then they could probably play the game next week. I think, they're going to have to push back Wild Card Weekend. The thing about the Super Bowl that does get tricky is that is an option that you brought up, and I was thinking about that as well. Just get rid of the bye week. Obviously, the Pro Bowl doesn't matter. They can host the Pro Bowl on Saturday, Super Bowl Sunday. That doesn't really mess with things too much. I do know that they have a media week, and I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of tricky. But I think I'm okay with either skipping the bye week or pushing it back. My only concern is if you push it back, that's got to be one of those things where hotels, airlines, etc., get that this is extenuating circumstances, and they offer you a refund or switch your ticket and your stay a week later, whatever it may be, but something that's not coming at the cost, of the consumers. But yeah, I mean, hoping for the best here. It's been pretty crazy situation, unprecedented. But I have loved seeing the support he has gotten, and I guess there's a silver lining to everything. I know it's kind of hard to find it, but if he does end up being okay, then I think it's been cool to see that silver lining, and definitely hoping for the best in the situation, Tom.
Absolutely. Well, regardless, and then just about anything is a hard left turn off of this topic.
Yeah, no kidding.
But regardless of when everything is going to be scheduled, we will be having a full slate of Week 18 games. Chief among them is going to be the Sunday night football matchup with the Detroit Lions heading into Green Bay to take on the Packers. As you mentioned at the top of the show, Green Bay wins this game. They are in the playoffs. Detroit, they need a little help from the LA Rams to beat the Seattle Seahawks, and that gives Detroit an opportunity to get into the playoffs. But even if that is already removed, if Seattle wins, Dan Campbell has said, I'm putting out the starters. We're either playing for the playoffs or we're playing to be a spoiler. And that certainly has a little extra juice given that this is a divisional matchup between a couple of teams that, quite frankly, and as a Bears fan, this feels, I feel a little bit of kinsmanship with Detroit. Not a lot of success against Green Bay over the past, 30 some odd years.
They beat them this year, though.
They have, and Detroit has looked, while on defense, not necessarily great. They've put up some numbers. This one's going to be a chilly one, however, outside of a dome. Basically, NFL has what they want out of this Green Bay Packers team, where they have Aaron Rodgers the last game of the season with a chance to get into the playoffs. Do you see the Packers getting there, or do you see the Detroit Lions either making the first playoff appearance in a while or playing spoiler to the Packers and saying, we're going to send Pete Carroll and the Seahawks to that last wild card spot?
Well, okay, first and foremost, look, I know what Dan Campbell's saying. I know Detroit's going to want to eliminate Green Bay, regardless of what happens. But Seattle's, well, again, it's the NFL. You never know. Rams are going to want to spoil Seattle too. You never know. But in theory, if we're going to draw this up how we think it's going to happen, Seattle should beat the Rams, right? That should happen. Rams have been, they're so injured. So Seattle should beat the Rams. No matter what Dan Campbell says, this is going to be a close game, right? In theory, it should be a close game. I think there's a little bit extra juice when you've got a playoff spot on the line versus when you don't. So I think if Seattle beats the Rams, there's going to be just a little bit less left of the lines. I wonder if they should have flexed this game to Saturday night, then moved to Titans-Jaguars. I know Titans-Jaguars, not the most exciting primetime game, but how many bad primetime games have we had on Monday night, Thursday night, even heck, Sunday night, some bad games. So I question the league's decision to flex that game specifically. I know they're doing it for Aaron Rodgers, but they could probably get the same effect on a Saturday night as far as viewership compared to Sunday night. So just something to think about. I know what the Lions are saying. I'm not saying they're not going to try, but it is something a little different when you can get a playoff spot on the line. With that said, Lions have won 7 of 9. Which started with the win over the Packers. Packers won 4 in a row. So 2 of the hottest teams in the NFL. You asked me 5-6 weeks ago, can either of these teams get in the playoffs? I would have said absolutely not. I'm going to pick Green Bay here. I hate doing it. I'll definitely be cheering for the Lions as a Bears fan and just as a cool story. Think about this. We could have the Lions and Jaguars both getting in the playoffs this year. How fun would that be? That would be a lot of fun. I do think it could go either way. I don't think it's a slam dunk pick. I'm almost tempted to say Green Bay wins, but the Lions cover. I think it's like a 4.5 point spread. I think this is one of these games that goes down to a last-second field goal. It's possible Green Bay covers by 6 or 7. This does feel like a one-score game to me personally, whether that's 6, 7, 3, 4, whatever. But I think the big difference here, even though the Lions defense actually did play great against Green Bay earlier this season, that was when Green Bay had a mess. Like, look, their passing game is still not good, but Christian Watson has emerged. They're getting better. Rodgers looks better. Green Bay's offense is certainly not as bad as they were earlier this season. The Lions have, this feels weird saying this, but Jared Goff right now is better than Aaron Rodgers. And the Lions have a better offense. But is it like way, way better? Because Green Bay's got a really good running game. They still have Aaron Rodgers, who's heating up at the right time. The Lions' offense is better, but it's not way better. Green Bay, though, if we're being honest, Tom, I hate to say this, but if we're being honest, fairly marketable advantage on defense. We just saw Jair Alexander and company hold Justin Jefferson to 1 catch for 15 yards, the NFL's leading receiver. You look at the Lions, they're 29th out of 32 in scoring defense, and they are 32nd out of 32 in total defense, allowing the most yards per game. As you mentioned, Green Bay at Lambeau Field, 5-3 at home they are this season. They've got the home field crowd. They know the weather late in the season. So while I'll be cheering for Detroit, I think the Packers win it and make the playoffs.
I think a little bit of a theme of this show for
Have
me
some
today
fun. Pick the Lions.
is going to be I'm going to pick what I want to have happen, and I want the Lions to beat the Packers in any event. I think if any team can be primed to kind of deal with a playoff letdown, it would be Dan Campbell and his Lions. Let's consider the fact that at one point this season, there were some serious questions, legitimate questions around the league about, does Dan Campbell finish the season as Lions head coach? And he has turned around and pretty much proven there is a culture shift here. There is something that we are building toward in the future. We're going to take Jared Goff, this cast off from a Rams team that went to the Super Bowl, and we're going to make him our own. And yeah, we'll go ahead and take a couple of LA's first round picks in the future. Thanks for the top 10 this year. I think that even if Seattle is able to beat the Rams, secure or at least prevent the Lions from making it to the playoffs, I could still see him saying, you know what? F this Rodgers guy. We're going to go out. We're going to get him. We're going to ruin his season. We're going to take away from the league. And I think that would be like a really nice, obviously the best bookend is that you start with Hard Knocks, preseason for the Lions, and you end with them making the playoffs. I think that would be a pretty nice a storybook, and then who knows what happens after that point. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Lions in this one. I think that they have some great individual talents. I really want to see Aiden Hutchinson get after Aaron Rodgers a bit. I think that would be really, really good. Of course, the Packers seem to be getting gelled up a little bit on offense now that Rodgers has kind of gotten to more of a rapport with his receivers, and of course their defense has been pretty solid all year as well. So definitely tall timber for the Lions, but I'm going to pick the upset in this one just because I feel like it.
Why not, Tom? Why not? Go with it, man.
Absolutely. This is not going to be the first time in the show that I just decide to go with what I want to have happen, because then I am of single minds. Everything is aligned within me, which kind of leads us into this Titans and Jaguars game. I'm going to pick the Jaguars to win this one over the Titans as well. And this one feels easier to pick because one team is starting Trevor Lawrence at quarterback and the other team is starting someone by the name of Joshua Dobbs. So it certainly feels like Jacksonville, at least at the most important skill position on the field, has the advantage. I don't know, Common, if do you have any inkling that maybe the Titans can overcome in this one, or do you think that Jacksonville goes ahead, locks this one up, and is a division winner with a winning record? I think if Tennessee were to win this game, they would be 8-9,
yeah,
and winning the division. So certainly feels better to go Jacksonville on this one.
Look, it's not a slam dunk just because Tennessee has Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry is a machine. With that said, though, yeah, you kind of hit it on the spot. Joshua Dobbs, third string quarterback for Tennessee entering the season. Ryan Tannehill, who is greatly underappreciated. And you see it. What happens when he doesn't play? They lose games. They didn't trust Malik Willis, their draft pick, their rookie quarterback. He's been, quite frankly, very, very bad. You can tell why they haven't trusted him. So Joshua Dobbs probably is a better option. But if you're turning to who was expected to be your third string quarterback, going up against the number 1 overall pick, who's actually starting to play like it, Trevor Lawrence has been really good of late. Titans have lost 5 straight. They lost to the Texans in that stretch. Jaguars have won 4 straight, 14 points over Tennessee already, 16 points against the Jets, 28 against the Texans, 40-34 against the Cowboys, a great Cowboy team. Jags at home, 6.5-point favorites. They should win this game. They should make the playoffs. Jacksonville is the better team. I'm picking Jacksonville, but Derrick Henry might have a thing or two to say after he rested up and quite possibly cost me a fantasy football championship against you, Tom Castleman. We'll see what happens. I know I mean, again, fantasy, I didn't even want to get into it just because it's so back. DeMar Hamlin's health is by far the most important, but other than like NFL, playoff scheduling, there's a lot of people who are waiting to see what's going to happen with their fantasy matchups.
Yeah.
I know personally I need to have a historic night from Joe Burrow to beat you in the championship. So we are still waiting there, but Derrick Henry certainly missing against the Cowboys did not help in fantasy, but give me Jacksonville in this game.
Yeah, well, certainly not the only game of consequence. We've covered NFC wildcard and obviously the AFC South, but NFC still has a little bit more to get sorted out. Who do you see getting, or no,
AFC.
Last wildcard spot in the AFC. Wrong letter there. Who do you see getting the last spot there, Common?
Couple scenarios. So Patriots are in if they beat the Bills. Even with everything that's happened here, and this is where this game becomes so much more tricky with the Bills and their situation. And again, this is truly unprecedented. I mean, sometimes we see teams after a horrific injury, after a sad situation, sometimes we see them rally around that and that helps them. Other times it's so mentally tough that it hurts you. So there's no way to know how the Bills will respond. But if they're even close to what they normally are, I mean, the Bills should beat the Patriots, right? They should. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that the Bills will beat the Patriots here. So if they lose, the Patriots are most likely done. They would need the Dolphins, Steelers, and Titans all to lose. So I don't see that happening. Steelers, by the way, they're keeping Mike Tomlin's streak alive of not having a losing season. And I don't think he'll have it this year. They're 8-8. They're playing the Browns, who they traditionally dominate. They should win that game 9-8. And then they would need the Pats to lose. And then they need the Dolphins to lose to the Jets, which gets very, very interesting because the Dolphins and Jets have both lost 5 in a row. The Jets are out of playoff contention. However, they could play spoiler to Miami, who's a division rival. Miami might be down to its third string quarterback potentially. Tua's not playing. Teddy Bridgewater might not play in that game. But I'm going to go with my preseason pick. I had the Dolphins getting a wild card in the preseason. Looked like a great pick about a month ago. Looking more iffy right now. But I look at the Jets and Dolphins both struggling. They both lost 5 in a row. But Miami still has a playoff spot on the line. They're 5-2 at home, which is where they're playing in this game. Obviously not having your number 1 quarterback hurts you, but they still have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, which makes it easier for any quarterback. So I think Miami actually beats the Jets. The Patriots lose to the Bills. Miami beat Pittsburgh head-to-head. Miami wins the tiebreaker over Pittsburgh, gets the last playoff spot. But not a slam dunk. Jets and Dolphins, I believe, is like even on the betting spread. Could go either way. Should the Jets win that game, I think Pittsburgh gets in because I'm pretty sure Pittsburgh will take care of business against the Browns. And having a certain TJ Watt back makes a massive difference. Look at how much better they're doing since he's back. And look at Najee Harris. Offensive line has been abysmal this season. I certainly can't blame him for his rushing issues, but down the stretch, that Raven game, Najee Harris looked like a beast.
Mhm.
So Kenny Pickett, again, not great, but getting better. I think they beat Cleveland in this game. So to go down to Pittsburgh and Miami for me for the last playoff spot.
Yeah, this one is just it's a really complicated thing to think about because it's basically a lot of it comes down to how is Buffalo feeling heading
Right.
into this game. And I think that on the one hand, they could come out and they could say, you know what, we have a rallying point with DeMar. You know, he's getting better. Let's focus on this. Let's go out and beat New England. Let's, you know, get this game rescheduled with Cincinnati. I mean, I suppose Cincinnati Buffalo could always be considered a no contest, and then they go down to win percentage for the playoffs. That was something we had discussed earlier that the NFL could do if they want to keep the schedule the same. Just declare no contest, go down to winning percentage. But I think that you know, I'm going to lean more that Buffalo's going to come out prepared, that they're going to come out resilient, especially if this news with DeMar continues in its positive trend toward his recovery. I could absolutely see them coming out and just going right over New England. New England's had a pretty strong defense all season long, but when you get kind of down into against whom have their defense played really well, it's been not really great quarterbacks. So when you have a great quarterback like Josh Allen, I think the Bills are going to knock the Patriots out. And then, yeah, it comes down to Dolphins, Steelers. I think I trust Steelers a little bit more just because we know that they're a known quantity heading into this last game. It's going to
They
be
need
them
more
at their
help,
best.
though.
Well, it's going to be the Steelers are at full strength. I mean, like I don't really know what to expect out of Miami's quarterback situation,
Sure.
which makes it a little bit more difficult for me to say, yeah, definitely Dolphins with confidence because, you know, while the Jets are out of it, I mean, Sauce Gardner's been a phenomenal cornerback for the Jets.
Love
He
the
could be
sauce.
going up against, you know, Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill and not necessarily winning every single matchup, but certainly making it a lot more difficult. And then, you know, if the Jets really want to play spoiler, they have a pretty strong defensive front. You're going after a third string quarterback. I
Hmm.
question how much Miami is going to be able to get their full offense kind of in place for this game. So I think I'm going to pick Steelers to grab the last spot just because they're a more known quantity. They're at fuller health than the Dolphins are. And I think that they have a more winnable game, obviously, than New England does. So I'll go with Steelers to grab that last spot in the AFC.
Yeah, real quickly, 100% agree with your logic there. If
Mhm.
they played head to head right now, I would pick Pittsburgh, no question. I just think that
Mhm.
they do have a more likely win. I just think the Jets have just come apart. So I think it's like
Mhm.
Miami's come apart, but I think the Jets have come apart even more. So, but we'll see. Definitely could go either way. Will be fun to see this weekend.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of football playoffs, we just had the college football playoff going up on New Year's Eve. Wild games. If anybody took overs, pre-game, in-game, end of game, you certainly had a wild finish. And I guess you know, kind of where the conversation lies for me is what is the difference between entertaining football and good football, because I think Common we can agree that as much as you know Drew and I like to razz you about that 6-3 LSU
Right.
Alabama game when we were back in college, saying this is the pinnacle of what football is. On the flip side, you know, 42-41, dramatic but not necessarily great football. I think there's a lot of issues or a lot of reasons as to why these games were as high scoring as they were, and this is both in this game and across the college football landscape. But let's just start down with probably the game that we thought was going to be the closest, most competitive all along, and that was Georgia Ohio State, where oddly enough Georgia had to make a comeback. And Stetson Bennett went out and got the job done. It was a missed field goal that determined the game in the closing seconds.
Yeah, I mean, first off, real quick, I think that we've seen a shift in college football, and I think part of it is the NFL too. But uh, the way these top teams recruit, I'm not saying that Georgia, Alabama is not recruiting great defensive players. They always are, but the shift to the passing game has created just a lot more points in general. Now, look, Michigan, TCU, will get at that into that in a second. There was definitely some bad football, some sloppy mistakes, but I think Georgia Ohio State was good football. It was just high scoring football. You go up against an offense that's that great. I mean, what wins these days? A great offense or a great defense? With the way the game is called at both levels, with the way teams recruit, with the way teams scheme, with the way players are prepared, I don't think it was bad football at all. I think it was great football in that game, at least. I think that was just great offense. There's no definite answer. There's great offense or great defense wins. I mean, typically the team that has both ends up winning overall. But if I had to put up like a great offense versus a great defense, I think more than 50% of the time, the great offense is going to win. That's just the way the game is done. So fantastic game. I mean, Georgia missed a kick earlier in the game too. So it's not like both teams didn't miss kicks in this game. But I don't know if we replayed this game. I think Georgia's defense would find ways to make more adjustments. But for me, the big story was Georgia down 14 in the fourth. How were they able to come back in that game? And one of the big things was actually Marvin Harrison Jr. getting hurt after 3 quarters. Ohio State's big play receiver, 5 catches, 106 yards, 2 touchdown catches. Obviously, his father, one of the all-time great receivers, maybe the best receiver in college football. Well, what happened in the fourth? Ohio State, they had a 3-and-out. They missed a field goal. They made a field goal. They had good drives, 40-plus yards a couple times, but they were not able to get the big play. And Marvin Harrison Jr. getting hurt, I think, was a huge difference in the fourth quarter of that football game. Because, I mean, look, I think Georgia played a little bit lesser than they normally would in this game. But if you spot Ohio State a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter, they would win it most of the time. So I think not having that receiver definitely hurt them. Stetson Bennett, I think the whole talk of him being a game manager, a walk-on, that's over. I mean, this guy's a baller. He's such a great player. 2 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter. Georgia's defense might not be as good as last year, but their offense is better. They're way better. After winning that national championship, the guy's got all the swag out there in the game. He's a legitimate top 3 or 4 college quarterback. I honestly think, Tom, I don't know what the updated rankings are, but that's an NFL quarterback right there. I'm not saying he's a superstar, but I think that guy is an NFL quarterback because he is a gamer. That's a guy I want on my squad. Maybe if I'm a lesser team, you start him. If I'm a good team, reliable backup. But Stetson Bennett is 100% an NFL quarterback for me. So definitely a great game. I think C.J. Stroud gets a lot of credit for me. 23 of 34, 348 pass yards, 4 passing touchdowns. Had some key plays with his legs as well, 34 rush yards. And that counts. They minus the sacks on his rushing total too. So I know he had more than that. So I thought that was a key part too. CJ Stroud was fantastic simply because, a lot of folks said that he wasn't a running quarterback. And that's why Georgia could, dominate against them because he didn't have to run. I think he's a lot like Bryce Young, a lot like CJ Stroud, a lot like Patrick Mahomes. Like Bryce Young, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, these guys prefer to pass the ball. They prefer to run to pass. But if they have to make a play with their legs, I'm not saying they're Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields or Michael Vick, but they're pretty competent and pretty good. And he showed you he's got plenty of athleticism. The difference in the game, it was a fair score. 1-point game, 1 play at the end of the game decided the game. Just an electric championship game, one of the best, or semifinal game. Felt like a championship. One of the best games we've ever seen. Brutal loss for Ohio State, but credit to Georgia for fighting back in a phenomenal semifinal.
Absolutely. And something that kind of jumps out to me with both of these games as we're transitioning from Georgia OSU to TCU Michigan is that we didn't have that typical, blowouts in the semifinal. These were all really competitive games. I know going in if you want to use the betting line as kind of a metric for how one team is supposed to be favored over another, clearly covers on both ends. But Ohio State, Georgia kept it really competitive, really close for a phenomenal game. And like you said, Marvin Harrison Jr., best receiver in all of football right now, going out with an injury. That'll be a reason why a couple of your offensive drives stall as he scored early, and I think was a pretty big reason why other guys had opportunities later for Ohio State. But shifting over to TCU and Michigan, I mean, these were two games, common that we pretty much just dismissed the underdogs outright, where we said, yeah, they can keep it
Certainly
within
did.
a one-score game. But like Ohio State, we could see them keeping it a bit closer because that is a bona fide blue chip program.
Sure.
We had no such respect
None.
for the
None.
Horned Frogs, and they came out. And let me just pull everything up right here. I don't think Michigan was leading at any point in this game. Like, I'm looking over all of
I
the
don't think
scoring
so.
tallies and everything, but TCU wire to wire won this game over Michigan. So I guess in this case, the bigger story is, did Michigan falter? Did TCU go out and take this win? I mean, these are two competing narratives. I think I know where I lie on this one now.
Yeah, I mean, I think as always in a case like that, it's a combo of both. But if you have to make a pick, it's definitely Michigan faltering. I mean,
Mm.
you look at Michigan; they outgained TCU 528 to 488. Both teams had 3 turnovers, but look at Michigan's turnovers: 2 pick sixes, and they fumble at the 1 yard line. I mean, essentially, that's like 21 points right there, just unaccounted for. Just terrible decisions by Michigan. That's a team that didn't turn the ball over all year, a well-coached team, not something you expect. I mean, look, you can't blame the refs. Definitely a lot of luck on that front, though. I know Michigan had that ball that should have been a touchdown where the receiver was ruled down at the 1. They fumble on the next play because, he was bobbling the ball. He didn't possess it until he got in the end zone. He might have, first made contact with the ball at the 1 yard line. Clearly, though, I think you could agree that was a bad call on that front. I don't so much care as much about the targeting at the end because I think that Michigan wouldn't have scored that drive anyway. But again, that's in its own case. But I think
Mhm.
TCU played great. I think Michigan's defense was phenomenal, and TCU putting up 488 yards. I think 51 points. That technically some of those were defensive scores, but even 30 plus against the Michigan defense is great. So definitely TCU played amazing. They had a game plan for how to attack Michigan. The defense made some huge turnover plays. I mean, the pick sixes, obviously Michigan messed up, but TCU made the plays. But I think this is a little bit more of Michigan giving this game away. I mean, it's not only 3 turnovers, just the manner of the turnover. That essentially did cost them 21 points. I mean, they lost by 6. They could have won by 15. So it was just like the clutch plays. I think there was a 3rd down at one point, maybe it was the 3rd quarter or early 4th, where they got like a long touchdown. And if Michigan had gotten a tackle, they would have stopped them. So I think Michigan made its fair share of mistakes. TCU, really good team. Like the other game, I don't think Georgia, I think it was more Ohio State playing great than Georgia being off. That 1-point game. This case, I think it was definitely more Michigan having miscues. I will say this real quick, though. To me, this was the greatest upset in the history of the college football playoffs. 8-point underdog for TCU, the biggest betting spread ever. Previous biggest underdog was Ohio State, 7 points against Alabama in 2014. That was with Ezekiel Elliott. As you mentioned, a blue blood program, an Ohio State team that ultimately won the national championship. This right here was the biggest upset we've seen. First win for the Big 12 in the playoffs.
Mhm.
And TCU, first win for them, obviously. Not a traditional powerhouse program. Definitely a massive upset.
Yeah, and I'm going to go the other way on this one and say
Oh,
this is more
okay.
about TCU going out and winning this game, because you talk about clutch plays, and typically we put that on offense. You can talk about clutch plays on defense as well. I mean, on that first pick six, that was a safety pretty much reading a route and just beating the receiver to the ball. Yeah, that's reading. That's being prepared, knowing your different landmarks, picking up your keys, and then breaking on the ball, following on that football instinct. I think that's a play that TCU made as much, if not a little bit more, than Michigan gave away. The second pick six, I mean, when you throw it over the middle of the field, linebacker was able to pick that off and return it for a touchdown. That's a little bit more on Michigan, but still, defensive players, they
Yeah, but
made plays just like offensive
the
players
fumble
made.
at the 1-2 though, the Michigan guy just dropped it. You
Sure,
know,
yeah, like that's one that you give away, but I think this was more about TCU being prepared on both sides of the ball, and this is something TCU has done all season long, whether it's against teams that are better or worse than them. Games have been typically pretty close, and then the Horned Frogs just rely on a big play or two to either break a game open or to win a game kind of in the closing moments. I mean, you look at against Oklahoma State, that's a 3-point win. Picked up, single possession wins over Baylor, Texas, Kansas throughout the season. Their only loss coming to Kansas State in that conference championship game by a couple of points kind of showed the limits of the program, which is they're not going to be a consistent world beater, but they certainly have a talent across the board on that first line, on the ones on the starters for the team. To go out and hang with anybody. It's just kind of later on in the depth chart, they don't have the same level of talent as most other programs.
The defense is really their issue because they can make big plays, but they
Yep.
don't have a great defensive team. Their offense, I think, is fantastic.
No, absolutely, yeah, and like they do enough to keep a game close, and then just they capitalize on a big play. They make a good read. Returning, pick six. Sure, there's variance to that, but I think that's just as much TCU taking a win over Michigan as it is Michigan giving it away. Because I think we presumed going into this game that it was Michigan's to win or lose, and I think tend to give TCU their propers that it was just as much theirs to go out and win as well.
Yeah, I don't quite agree, but I agree they played great. I just think the three such horrific turnovers for Michigan did cost them, but we'll see.
Sure.
Definitely a good debate there.
Absolutely. Well, after giving some props to TCU, the Horned Frogs, the betting world has come out and said they are 2-touchdown underdogs against Georgia for the national championship on Monday. So I don't know. There's a fine line to walk between giving props to a program and also basically calling it what it is, and it feels like this is going to be Georgia repeating as national champions, right? Unless you envision something different. I don't know.
Well, I envision them covering 12.5 points. I envision that much at least. I think there is a fine line between that. I mean, I think Georgia's the better team, no question, but TCU has been getting disrespected all season, actually. This might be a tease to betting locks of the week, but TCU this season against the spread, Tom, 10-3-1. And even though I bet against TCU in this game and lost, I've consistently bet for them this season, and they've been one of my winningest college picks this year personally. So, I mean, I think as far as what can TCU do to win this game, I do think that Ohio State exposed Georgia's defense a little bit. I think that Georgia has really good front. It's hard to run the ball against them. They're physical. But the secondary for Georgia, maybe not as great as we thought. I mean, Ohio State put up 300, 40, 50 yards passing. If TCU abandons the run and goes all out pass, they have a chance in this game. It's kind of ironic because Max Duggan is more of a dual threat quarterback for them. Still put up more than 3,500 pass yards, though, in 32 passing touchdowns. So it's not like he's not capable of passing the ball. So that's their path to victory if they abandon the run and air out the ball. The other interesting part, though, is, like I said earlier, right? These days, on average, the best offense wins. I think Georgia has clearly a better defense, no question about that. But you look at their offenses, TCU actually gets about 1.5 more a game, about 41 a game for the season. They average Georgia averages about 25 more total yards a game. Their offenses are pretty similar. I think that TCU's better running the ball. Georgia's better passing the ball. But offensively, TCU, in theory, has the firepower. I might like Georgia a little bit better because Stetson Bennett can air out the ball more. But they do have an offense that could keep up with Georgia's offense. I just think their defense falls a little short. But I think they can cover 12.5. I am expecting a high scoring
Mhm.
game. Both of these teams scoring more than 80 points total. Their games combined for more than 80 points total. So the over under 62.5 might be in trouble. I'm just going to go straight for the score, Tom. I'm going 38-31 Georgia. We might have a little backdoor cover action, but I think this is going to be a lot closer than people think.
Yeah, I think this one for me is going to be a little bit more in Georgia's favor. I'm going to go with, say, 41-31, simply because, what did Ohio State expose against Georgia is that if you have a top 10 NFL pick at quarterback, and then a guy who's probably going to be another top 10 pick at
Yeah.
receiver when he's eligible next year, you can do a lot with that.
TCU have a
TCU
really
has
good
that
receiver too, though.
exactly.
Their
So
receiver is amazing.
they do. So I
Um,
think that's the sort of thing that's going to allow them to put up points. Is Quentin Jefferson? I want to say is his
I
name.
think that's right. Yeah.
And then you've got Duggan at quarterback. Duggan not as good of a player as C.J. Stroud. So
But
yeah, I
pretty
think this
good
one's going to
still.
be kind of sort of. I think there's going to be points on the board. I don't know necessarily how close it's going to be because another thing that I kind of like in going back and forth on is how much does the long layoff matter for defense? And now that Georgia has gotten back out there, they've hit guys, they've been in full mode. Now they have like that a little more than a week off from playing on Saturday to the championship on Monday. Is that enough for the defense to say, "Oh yeah, this is how we're supposed to feel. We're back in game shape type of thing. Let's go get after it." That's why I give a little bit more props to Georgia's defense, doing a little bit more to limit. I think their offense is just as capable of putting up another 40 burger against TCU this time. So I'm going to go 41-31. So again, a cover, a little less sure of that
Yeah.
cover, a
Sure.
little narrower, but I think yeah, this is going to be Georgia hoisting a trophy for a second year in a row, which means I am due to start rooting against them next year.
Yes, you are, and it makes them the program in college football. And I
Yes.
mean, it'll make them number one right now. Alabama, obviously, always in the conversation, but you win back-to-back titles. I mean, think about how good the SEC championship is going to be for years to come, though. Alabama, Georgia, it's going to be pretty wild. Going to be pretty wild.
Absolutely. So that takes us out of the college football championship and quite frankly into betting locks of the week. As you mentioned, Common, decent week for me. Not as decent for you. I'm sorry to
No,
say. I'll let you
no.
run through the recap.
Well, so here I am. I actually had a good betting week this weekend, Tom. In the green, as they say. All year, on average, I've done well picking college football spreads. I have done horrendous picking NFL. So I said for this show, I'm going to forget the NFL. Lo and behold, I went 5 for 6 betting on the NFL on Sunday, Tom. 5 for 6. Only the Eagles did me in. And lo and behold, college went badly. I had Georgia covering 6.5 against Ohio State, Michigan covering 7.5 against TCU. We know how those results ended up. And then the Bulls, man, they've had some really, really bad performances this season. And every time I watch a Bulls game, I seem like this team is terrible. And then I go out and bet against them, and they tell me otherwise against the Bucks. So Bucks minus 4.5 against the Bulls. Bucks were up like 9-11 points with 2 minutes to go. The Bulls go on like a 13-2 run to send the game to overtime and win. Giannis puts up 40-something points, 20-something rebounds, or whatever it was. Maybe it was even 50 points. I lose track. The man is superhuman. But the Bulls still find a way to win. So not my greatest week on this show, although really good NFL Sunday. So I'll take the L's somewhere. Better that I don't take them in the pockets, which I definitely did not take on Sunday. So Sunday was actually good this week. You were 2-1. Actually, there was 2 picks that you got correct. Actually, all 3 of your picks, ironically, were picks that I agreed with and was eyeing. But I wanted to have fun and put the CFP semis. USC Tulane over 62.5 points. Correct for you. 46-45 Tulane. You were spot on. You told us USC's defense is horrible. They gave up 16 points in the last 4 minutes. 100% right, Tom. 91 total points, easily clear that one. You had Utah minus 2.5 over Penn State. You missed that one. Penn State winning by 14. And this one I did bet on, maybe not on our show, but elsewhere. Alabama minus 6.5 over K-State. Bama winning 45-20. So 2-1 week for you. What do you have for us this week?
So for this week, I'm going to continue with putting up a college football over right now on Bovada, Georgia TCU. And I want to make sure I have the latest line. I believe it is over 63 is the point total for the game. Yeah, the over under is 60. I'll take 62.5, but going off of Bovada, I have it at 63. So either way, obviously, with both of our final scores, we're on board with that happening as a fairly likely outcome. So I think that one's going to be a fairly decent layup. And then as far as the NFL lines, I have to pick between 2 out of these 3.
Okay. Hit me.
So this is where I said early in the show, I'm picking things that I want to have happen.
Okay.
I want the Texans to beat the Indianapolis Colts and give the Bears a shot at the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft
number
this
1,
year,
baby!
Which they can sell off for a boatload of whatever they want to. Give me Texans plus 2.5 against the Indianapolis Colts. It would also help the Colts a little bit for their draft position and or assets to trade up. So yeah, give me Texans plus 2.5 against Indianapolis. And then I'm on the fence. Both of these lines are 6.5. I'm debating going between Seattle against LA and Jacksonville against Tennessee.
Jacksonville. Whatever you pick, you know it's going to be wrong, and the other one will be right. You know that's going to happen.
I think I'm going to go prime time on this one. I'm going to say Jacksonville.
Okay.
Minus 6.5. That's the one I'm going to be locking in. Basically, like I'm just looking for teams that have something to play for a little bit here. I know Texans not quite so much, but
I like the Jacksonville line.
You like 6.5 for Jaguars over?
You got to flip it because you know how well my picks have been going. You got to flip it now. You got to fade me.
Now, I'm locking in Jacksonville minus 6.5.
Okay.
We'll find out. We got a little something for the entire weekend: Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday. So Georgia TCU over 63, Texans plus 2.5, Jaguars minus 6.5 is what I'm locking.
All right. Well, I've got one same pick as you: TCU Georgia over 62.5. Look, I mean, it might be, call it recency bias, call it like you saw the last game, but I mean, 51-45 TCU Michigan. That's what, 96 points. Georgia Ohio State 42-41, 83 points. I don't know if we're going to see quite that many, but 62.5 feels like a low total. I mean, I said this earlier. On average, great offense beats great defense. Georgia averages about 39.4 points. TCU about 41.1. I mean, and TCU's defense gives up 25 a game. So they should give up more against the great Georgia team. Both of these teams score a lot, over 62.5. I'm not going to say it, but I'm just not going to say it, but feels good. You know where I'm hinting there for our regular viewers. They know what I'm hinting at. I'm just not going to say it, Tom.
I think you owe like 7 houses at this point.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But I feel good about it. TCU plus 12.5 against Georgia. I talked about it earlier. I mean, I know I'm kind of repeating myself from a recent segment here. It's the last time to bet on college football. Why not finish off with some national championship picks? TCU 10-3-1 against the spread. They've been consistently disrespected by people in the country, including myself last week. They have one loss by 3 points where they were stuffed by 1 yard. They could have won that game. They were a yard away from maybe being undefeated. TCU should cover 12.5 points. Even though I think they lose the game, I think they get the cover. And then lastly, I haven't done well betting on Bulls games this year. I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to mix it up this time. So I think this is a good caveat. So I'm going to go Bulls Nets over 235.5 points. That seems like a high total, but the Bulls just gave up 71 points to Donovan Mitchell. 145, 134 in overtime. Nets just put up 139 points against the Spurs. Nets have great scorers, Bulls terrible defense. But this season, the Bulls have played better, at least offensively, against some of these better teams. I do think the Nets are going to cover outright as well in this game, but since that hasn't been working, I'm just going to pick the over here. Bulls Nets over 235.5. Should have a lot of points in this one. I think this could go over 240, maybe over 250. Mm-hmm. It might get ugly in this game for the Bulls defense.
Well, she'll announce like an hour before tip-off. Kevin Durant, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, all sitting, all taking a rest day.
Yeah,
your favorite thing.
That will happen. That will happen.
Trivia. So in light of what you mentioned with the Donovan Mitchell game, I'm just kind of like pulling a couple of different facts around that.
Oh, I have the same thing, by the way. But go ahead.
You might have this. Yeah. Most total points contributed to by a single player in a game?
So I have that as a fact. I have a more easier trivia question. It'll probably be too easy for you.
All right, go for it.
Well, do you want to go over what you're going to do, or do you want me to just do my part?
Well, basically, it was just obviously Donovan Mitchell putting up 71 points against the Bulls. Can you name the top two total points where it's the number of points scored and assisted? Exactly. That's
right. So it's 104 for Wilt because he had 100 points and then 2 assists for 104. 99 for Mitchell at 11 assists in the game. So this is what I have written down. I know typically our sports trivia is pretty tricky. The last couple of weeks has been a little easy, but I do want to have this as the trivia question just because obviously for obvious reasons, the Damar Hamlin situation, the college football, drama in the semifinals, week 18 in the NFL. This Donovan Mitchell performance has been lost in the American sports world. He put up maybe for sure top 5 greatest game ever. You could argue for the best. Look, 7th player to score at least 70 points in an NBA game with the 71 points against the Bulls. He also had 11 assists, accounted for 99 points, which is the second most ever. The 34 field goal attempts to get to 70 points is the least in NBA history. One of the all-time great performances. I think you'll do good with this trivia question, but I think it's fun to talk about. So can you name the other 6 players who have put up 70-point games, 70 or more points, NBA history?
Okay, so obviously we talked about
one is
Wilt.
easy.
Yeah, Wilt, and then Kobe with his 81.
Yep, those are the 2 highest scoring games. Wilt, by the way, 6 times. No other person has done it twice. He's had 6 70 or more point games, 5 in the 70s, then the 100-point game, Wilt Chamberlain.
All right, so that's 2. See, now it's going to get a little bit trickier because I got to think about how far back I need to go with some of these.
You're missing 4. So Mitchell,
4.
There's 7. So Mitchell was the 3rd, obviously.
Yeah, Kobe and Wilt. Okay, so prolific scorers. Did T-Mac get 70 at any point?
Never. Michael Jordan never got 70 either.
No, it wasn't his highest 63, and that was in the playoffs.
69.
Oh, it was 69.
69 against the Cavs.
1 shy. Who put up set? It had to be somebody who just did not care about passing much. Would it be like Allen Iverson? Is that one?
Not Allen Iverson. There's 3 historical players.
Okay.
And then there's 1 other active player, which I'm surprised you didn't get. Yeah, active player.
Would it be Luka? Because he's been crazy.
No, Luka put up 60, 20, 10. Never 70, though. Not yet,
never
at least.
70.
He'll get there. Most 50-point games in an NBA season, by the way, I think ever I saw it. And we're only halfway through roughly. So crazy.
Okay, well, if we're going old time, Bob Pettit for the old Hawks, was he one?
Nope.
No.
A little bit more modern than him.
I don't think Larry Bird ever did that.
Nope. Well, good. This question is harder than I thought.
Yeah,
Maybe
no,
I'm
this
just
is this is getting tricky.
I'm just
Alex
such
Alex
an NBA.
English.
Not Alex English, great scorer.
Uh,
One of them is one of my favorite stories because he put up this number on the last day of the NBA season
oh,
to get the scoring
that's a
title.
good hint. Yeah, David Robinson, because he wanted to
71,
show up
the
Shaq.
Admiral,
I
to
forgot
get the
about that.
NBA scoring title. Yes.
So petty. It's
Yeah,
great.
I love it. So he had
All right.
71. Another guy also at 71. This is a guy who was a very prolific scorer. We not in our era, but not well, I guess it is kind of a while back, but not like Bob Pettit old. Plays for one of the I mean, maybe the greatest, well, maybe the second greatest franchise. One of the two powerhouses historically.
It's not Kareem, is it?
Not Kareem. You're somewhat warm.
The logo, Jerry West.
Not Jerry West.
No.
Yeah. The other great Lakers. He's not even a top 5 Laker of all time. That's how good the Lakers are.
James Worthy?
Not James Worthy. He was better than James Worthy, though. Not Magic.
Is it Shaq?
Not Shaq. He's gotten to 60 before, never 70.
Great Laker, better than Worthy.
You're probably like, so you listed off, obviously, like LeBron, but he hasn't been there for as long. No. We said it's not him. We have like what? Magic is the greatest Laker ever. Then it's like,
and I mentioned Kobe.
And then like Kareem. I don't know. I mean, second one's hard. Kareem, Kobe, Shaq, Jerry West. Those are your top 5 Lakers. This is probably the 6th best Laker player of all time.
Elgin Baylor?
That's Elgin Baylor, 71 points. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm missing.
You're missing
one?
Now 2.
Just 2. Okay.
One more retro guy, and then the active guy. So the retro guy is a center. I'll give you that clue. I think he's a center, power forward center.
Okay.
He was one of the all-time great college players. He was good in the NBA as well, but not maybe as good.
Bill Walton.
Not Bill Walton. Let me look this up. I'm looking up here on my phone to give you another clue, maybe.
Maybe Moses Malone. I'm just like grasping at straws now, to be honest. Maybe Moses Malone. Who else?
NC State star in college.
NC State?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
This guy is probably of all of the 70. Well, actually, not. That's not true. Donovan Mitchell might be the worst of them. But if not Donovan Mitchell, probably the worst guy of the 70-point scorers.
NC State. Yeah, I'm going to need an extra clue or two on this. I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, this is the one that I thought would be the hardest. So played in the 70s and 80s with the Nuggets and Supersonics. He was actually a shooting guard. I'm thinking, for some reason in my head, I messed up this with Ralph Sampson, but it's not Ralph Sampson. But a shooting guard in the 70s and 80s.
I've got nothing.
David Thompson.
Okay, yeah. You give me a million years, I don't think I would have put that together.
73 points.
So I just need the last guy. He's still playing.
I call him like, I do want to tread carefully here. But I would say a mini Kobe. What player in the NBA is probably most like Kobe today? Very similar in that he's a very streak shooter. You know, he can be a good passer and good overall player. But when you think of him, you think of scoring. But he has these like bad games, then he goes off sometimes. He loves Kobe Bryant. Kobe has personally hyped him up before.
Oh, okay. That's the big clue is Tatum.
Not Tatum.
Jason Tatum? Oh, not Jason Tatum.
That was one of the
two. He's a big.
One of the two guesses I thought you would have.
Okay, so if it's not Tatum, putting up scoring.
He did it a few years ago when the team was bad. The team is good now. Very streaky shooter. Very streaky shooter.
Well, it's not Kevin Durant because he's always on.
No, not Kevin Durant.
Streaky shooter for a team that was bad but is now good.
Yeah,
Devin Booker?
Devin Booker. Yeah,
All right.
70 points.
When was that? Like, how many
Uh,
years ago was it?
I want to say that might have been the year before the pandemic. I got to look it up. But it
Gotcha.
was like he was still young. That's kind of like when he kind of announced his name to the NBA. Like, who is this guy,
Yeah.
Devin Booker?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good trivia question.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Absolutely. All right. Statements of the week. I'll get us kicked off with a rumor, and I'm going to address it because these sorts of things don't get out unless things are kind of far along the lines. But the Bears, as you might know, are looking for a new president, a new CEO for the organization, as Ted Phillips is retiring at the end of the season. And the name that came up was Kevin Warren, the current Big Ten commissioner, and he is being considered for the role of president and CEO for the Chicago Bears. And once I heard the name, because this is the sort of thing where coaches we kind of have loose tabs on, even general managers if you're into the nitty gritty. But as far as team presidents, that's not something that you really have names in the hopper, so to speak. But when his name was mentioned, I thought to myself, this could not be a better hire if they end up going with this guy. In fact, I would be disappointed if they went with just about anybody else,
Okay.
especially when you consider his resume. His experience across the entire spectrum of football. He was a player agent at one point. He's been in multiple front office, so he's not an insular hire with the Bears, but has been in the front office for Detroit, for the Rams when they were in St. Louis, and for the Minnesota Vikings as well. And the big thing about his experience there is that he helped Minnesota with their new stadium that they have, which hosted a Super Bowl, which has hosted, I believe, a Final Four. Chicago's looking around at other cities, so looking at Minneapolis, Indianapolis, Detroit, and saying, "Hey, these guys are all getting these major events for these major sporting events." Only reason Chicago can't have that is because they've got that stadium on the lakefront. They've got property out in Arlington Heights, and Kevin Warren can come in, and he has experience across all levels of football organizations for really.
You want to see
getting
the Bears in
on
a dome, though?
I wouldn't mind it.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind it at all.
Bears weather. I know I'm an offense guy, but Bears weather, defense, I don't know.
It can be a retractable dome, or it can be something where, hey, it's going to be, kind of like moderately cold out. We want to get a little bit of that in there. But I think, like there are so many people across the league, both people who played for the Bears and then just visiting teams who say, this field is absolutely awful. The playing surface is not great. And when you have the fact that the Bears currently also have to work with the Chicago Parks District, I mean, there's concerts, there's all sorts of things that go on at Soldier Field. This gives the Bears an opportunity to have full control over the events that take place at their facility. Gives them this brand new, awesome stadium. Not without its drawbacks for sure, but if this is the path that the Bears want to go, Kevin Ward would be a great choice. In addition to the fact that he has a very extensive football background, as I mentioned. Bears currently have a first-time general manager in Ryan Poles, a first-time head coach in Matt Eberflus, and they're going to have a really high pick, anywhere between 1 and 4 in this upcoming draft.
And they might trade down, right?
They could trade down. They could do something crazy where if Ryan Poles says, you know what, I believe in Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud more than Justin Fields. I want to make this pick. I want to send Justin Fields elsewhere. These are the sorts of things where having a person with deep football knowledge like Kevin Warren would be a great asset to the Chicago Bears organization. He already lives in Chicago, hasn't worked with the Bears before, although he's represented some players who played for the Bears. So he has a little bit of organizational ties. And from what I'm reading out of different reporters at The Athletic, everybody who talks about Kevin Warren, everybody who knows Kevin Warren absolutely raves about him. So, I just hear all those things. I just go, you know what? This would be a really, really exciting thing. So I hope my statement of the week is that I hope he gets the role. I hope that that's something that the Bears are going to be announcing at the end of the season as part of their press conference and kind of tidying everything up. And that it's just this got leaked out as kind of a bit of a test balloon, a little bit of a precursor. But I think overall, fan reception has been great. I think it'd be a fantastic hire for the Bears.
You've sold me, Tom. You've sold me. Sounds good to me. Let's make it happen. Very convincing
Absolutely.
argument there. So normally, you know me, statement of the week. I like to go out there and put up something controversial, something very bold. Sometimes I give love to my favorite athletes because why not, right?
Hmm.
This week, I'm going to go a little different route with the statement of the week. This one is not a bold statement. It's not anything too crazy. It's pretty basic, and I think it's something everyone can agree with. But in journalism school, they teach you let's go full circle. We started with the Damar Hamlin news. I do want to
Hmm.
end with that. I'm going
Absolutely.
to say that I want to give, it's kind of like a salute. I know we haven't salutes, that statements. We've kind of more zoned in on just having statements on the show. But the statement and salute is that I absolutely love how the whole country has rallied around Damar Hamlin and this toy drive that he had to GoFundMe for. That his original goal was $2,500. It's more than 5 million in donations. I mean, it could be this is again. This is Wednesday afternoon. This could be at 6, 7. It's just crazy. The love and support. You know, fans gathering outside the hospital. The prayers, the thoughts. I mean, just it's really really cool to see the whole country come together. And I'm gonna before we sign off here, I want to make sure I'm searching Damar Hamlin here on Twitter. I want to see if there's anything else that we're seeing. I don't think there's any sort of update at the moment here,
Hmm.
Tom. But yeah, making progress. Same thing we read earlier. But I think it's just really cool to see how the country has come together around this. The sports world, all sorts of different athletes, all sorts of different organizations. I think it's very cool to see this. I think I mean, I'm hoping as a society, as a world, I want us to be a better world. I know that sounds like uh like a tough statement, but one thing, and I know every country and everyone does this, but something about America, I feel like this country has so many great things about it, so many not so great things. To be fair, as does every country. But one
Hmm.
thing that I've noticed in this country is, like the 9/11, how everyone rallied together and came together. And now we're seeing this with this Damar Hamlin situation. It's a horrific situation, but the outpouring support, both like mental, emotional, financial, that we've seen is truly special.
Absolutely. Prayers for Tamar that and a speedy and full recovery. This is something that, as divisive and as tribalistic as sports can be in terms of different camps, different favorite teams, rivalries, and whatnot, sports also has the power to bring a lot of people
It
from a
does.
lot of different places together, and that's what we're seeing out of a truly scary event on the field. And from it, we have seen such an outpouring, like you said, across all sorts of places. So it helps shine a little bit of a light on how good things can be. It's not all about who's the goat, who's this, who's that. These, quite frankly, just like silly things that we do to entertain ourselves and pass the
Sure.
time and whatnot.
Sure.
We actually there are good things that come out of this as well. So yeah, prayers for Damar Hamlin and his family. Prayers for the Buffalo Bills, for his teammates, his brothers, who that's a tough thing. That's somebody that you've been with all season long. I know he's a young player. I
Yeah.
think he's only been in the league a year or two, but clearly, deep ties with all those guys. They are a shared family, a brotherhood. So also, as these guys have experienced a trauma on the field. Same thing with Cincinnati, something that they've been a part of. Recoveries for them as well. Obviously, not to the same extent, but no less important for their mental well beings as well.
Yeah, 24 years old, by the way. So, I mean,
Mhm.
I was looking up on my phone, want to make sure I didn't butcher his age. I thought it was 24. I was correct. It's just something I mean, you don't want that to happen to anyone, but a 24-year-old guy living out his dream. And real quickly, you mentioned the Bengals. I think the Bengals have handled this with class as an
Absolutely.
organization. Obviously there was no arguments. Let's continue the game. I mean, again, this is mentally trying for the Bengals as well. And I don't want to talk too much about the game itself because this is more about the game. But in theory, if that game gets continued, the Bengals clearly have the edge, and we have the number one seed, potentially in the AFC on the line. And the Bengals have, they've been very respectful. Nothing coming out of their camp otherwise. So again, tragic situation, hoping for the best outcome. We'll definitely be talking about it next week on the show, and hopefully we can come on the air here and give you guys some good news next week. Thanks again, Tom, for another great show. We'll see you next week. Thank you to all the viewers, listeners. You guys are great. Salute Your Sports. Truly a pleasure to do this with you, Tom, every week. Have a good one, everyone.